I've been thinking about why Star Wars Outlaws flopped so hard. 10 years ago, an open-world Star Wars game would have been an immediate winner, and on paper you'd think it still would be, but in practice, that's clearly not the case. The game reportedly only sold 1 million copies within its first month, which might be great for a small development studio putting out their first major release. But for a company like Ubisoft, they probably expected somewhere in the ballpark of 5 to 10 million copies being sold. That is, as they put it, much softer than expected. Just for some perspective, EA's Battlefront games sold over 30 million copies between the two of them, while the Jedi series by Respawn sold over 40 million. That is a huge discrepancy in players, and there's a lot of reasons why Outlaws isn't doing well. Poor word of mouth, bugs, unpolished gameplay mechanics, Ubisoft losing the good graces of their customers, etc. But I think there's two major issues contributing more than any other, and nobody's really talking about it, even though they're the most obvious reasons. The big problems are the focus of the content and the current Star Wars fanbase, i.e., the modern audience, as much as it pains me to say that. Stick with me here. It might get a little contentious, but I'm just saying it how it is, and as somebody who's been making content on Star Wars games for the last couple of years, I'm very aware of the trends. So let's talk about the first problem, the focus of the content. The entire premise of Star Wars Outlaws is just not something that most Star Wars fans are into, especially after getting spoiled by the Jedi series. Sneaking around and firing at bullet sponge enemies, it just doesn't hit the same after you've been swinging a lightsaber around and using the Force. It feels like a significant downgrade in how we as fans experience the Star Wars galaxy. When you see it through the eyes of a Jedi versus through the eyes of a scoundrel, one definitely taps into the power fantasy a little stronger than the other. Not to mention, I can't get that Han Solo quote from Episode 4 out of my head.
Bring him on, I prefer a straight fight to all this sneaking around.
This is a game about being a smuggler, and the King Smuggler himself doesn't even approve of the stealth gameplay. I'm not saying nobody wanted this. Stealth games definitely have an audience, and I admit even I was curious what it would be like, and having a more grounded approach to Star Wars, it can make it more relatable to us normal people who don't have the Force. But this is a video game that is set in a fantastical galaxy far, far away where magic and space wizards exist, and yet here we are as a bland human character with no magic powers who has to sneak around the bad guys to get to the end. If Jedi Survivor is a 9 out of 10 on the excitement scale, Outlaws is a solid 3, and I'm being generous with that. The focus of the content just isn't appealing. If we could use a lightsaber or the Force in this game, it would instantly tack on 3 more points to that excitement factor. A lack of enthusiasm for the gameplay would be enough to stifle sales for any game, but there's one other main reason that Outlaws is not doing well, and I think this is the most important reason of all that nobody really talks about, even though everybody knows this is true, and that's the overall lack of enthusiasm for the Star Wars brand. Look, it's no secret that Star Wars is basically dead in the year 2024. Disney has done a fantastic job at turning the die-hard fans away while catering to the new fans who won't actually stick around like the old ones did. That's why we call them tourists. They're very temporary. The current fan base is fickle. They think Anakin blew up the Death Star. They'll forget Star Wars even exists as soon as something shinier comes along. The George Lucas era is over. It's done. It's not coming back. Disney Star Wars is Star Wars now, and over 10 years after picking up the rights, they still can't get this franchise right. The interest in the new shows, or rather the lack thereof, is evidence of that fact. Apathy has set in a while ago, and projects like The Acolyte and Outlaws are paying the price for it. This is what happens when you alienate your fan base and call them racist or sexist when they have legitimate criticisms. This is what happens when you hire activists who use identity and politics as a shield for a poor product. Star Wars is no longer the king of entertainment franchises, and the current leadership at Lucasfilm is 100% to blame. Look at the news we just got about the writer for the upcoming new Jedi Order movie leaving the project, which makes him roughly the 20th writer or director to part ways with Lucasfilm since Disney bought it out. Kathleen Kennedy, or whoever is making the creative decisions over there, they're constantly unhappy with what these writers are bringing to the table. And after so many cycles of this, of creatives coming in to much enthusiasm and then promptly leaving, you have to assume the problem is not with these writers, it's with Lucasfilm. They are the lowest common denominator here. The company has a terrible habit of announcing projects that haven't even begun production yet, only for the news to come out a few months later that they're no longer working on it, with the writer or director leaving, and the project is now canned or on hiatus. This happens so much, and the projects that actually get greenlit, like The Acolyte or Outlaws, usually have a lackluster reception. I know I kind of shifted from talking about Outlaws to Lucasfilm in general, but I think it's connected, I really do. This is a form of trickle-down economics. All the BS is starting at the top, and it is permeating into all the other projects that Lucasfilm is in charge of, and that includes the games. Star Wars has kind of become something that's been difficult to support over the years, considering how vastly it's changed. It is not the same Star Wars that we had even 10 years ago, and if you say you have a problem with that, you are now seen as toxic, or you are seen as... what's the word that the shills all use? Chuds. Yeah, you're seen as a chud if you have something negative to say about current Star Wars, even if your criticisms are 100% legitimate. This isn't new. This is something that's been going on for the last couple of years, and I want to bring it back to another game to sort of drive this point home. There's another Star Wars game that came out from a major publisher just within the last 5 years that also did really poorly, which follows the exact same pattern that Outlaws follows, where the focus of the content is not what players want, and the current Star Wars fan base is not the type to go out and support this product. You may have forgotten this even exists. Squadrons is a flight simulator from EA that came out in 2020, and it's actually a pretty decent game. All original trilogy-era starfighters, it's got intuitive flight controls, compatibility with VR and sticks to give you a fully immersive experience. It's actually pretty good. Unfortunately, just like Outlaws, this one didn't sell that great either, and it was only a $40 game at launch, so the barrier to entry was even lower. To be fair, it was a much smaller project targeting a smaller market. It was a niche within a niche, but that's kind of my point. The game just wasn't what most fans wanted to play. The focus of the content did not appeal to the broader player base. Then you have to look at the fan base and the audience it was appealing to. If you look at the campaign and you see all these colorful characters, you can tell right away the kind of audience this was made by and for. I want to be careful about how I navigate this because this is a video game channel and I've lately been a little more open on social commentary and social politics more than I probably should be. But in this case, I think I'm going to hit it right on the head. Activists. It was made by activists for activists. These aren't gamers. These are people who are trying to inject political and social commentary into their video games, and again, using it as a shield if you have any kind of criticism against it. And this isn't exclusive to just Star Wars. It's not unique to just Star Wars games. This is an industry-wide issue that's happening everywhere, and anybody with eyes can see it. It's really no surprise that the games that heavily lean into DEI and social commentary fail miserably. Think your Dustborns, think your Concords. And it's not even necessarily the DEI stuff that's bad, it's the fact that that's all the game is focusing on. Straight up, if you have a game that plays really well, it's fun to play, you're excited to start it up, and you don't want to put it down, and it happens to have diversity, equity, and inclusion in it, that's not a bad thing. Nobody is going to complain about that. But it's when the game has no other redeeming qualities. It's when the DEI and social commentary is all you have to lean on, and then you attack the gamers and fans who have criticisms about the gameplay, calling them racist or sexist or bigots, because your game is awful. It has nothing to do with the social commentary and everything to do with the fact that you're hiding behind the social commentary to compensate for a mediocre product. I think these are the biggest issues that are plaguing Star Wars Outlaws. The content's focus is on the life of a scoundrel or a smuggler. We have no force powers, no lightsabers, no Jedi. We get a little bit of Darth Vader, but that's about it. I will always say what separates the Star Wars universe from every other generic sci-fi universe out there is the Force. It's the conflict between the light and the dark sides. Without the Force, it's just another standard science fiction universe set in some obscure galaxy with weird-looking aliens in it. When people think of Star Wars, it's usually the lightsabers and the Jedi and the Force powers that come to mind, not necessarily the space battles and the bounty hunters, even though that's part of it. When you have a game where you can live out a Jedi power fantasy, learning to use the Force and becoming a powerful swordsman, speeding around an open world not using the Force, it's just not as exciting. Then consider that a lot of elements of this game were designed to appeal to activist types. It's no wonder why half the Rhodians have the Killmonger haircut. It's no wonder why Kay is a woman with very unfeminine features. Take it with some skepticism, but alleged developers at Ubisoft have gone on record saying that they made Kay racially ambiguous on purpose so that players could more easily see themselves in her and relate to her. That's ridiculous. My favorite game of the year right now is Stellar Blade. In that game, you play as a jiggly Korean girl named Eve. I am not a jiggly Asian girl, but I can still relate to her on a human level and empathize with her emotions and follow her growth throughout the story. It doesn't matter who the player character is, and that's honestly how most people feel about it. It's these modern games developers who are so obsessed with immutable characteristics like race and gender who have to make it the focal point of their games, at the expense of good gameplay. Here's what I think Lucasfilm needs to do to course correct, and I'm saying this because I'm biased because I'm a gamer. This is just what I want, and I'm sure you Star Wars gamers will want this too. I don't think the future of Lucasfilm is in the shows or even the movies at this point. I'm not saying don't make shows or movies, absolutely still do that, especially the movies, because that's the bread and butter of Star Wars. But I think Lucasfilm needs to lean more into the gaming side of things, because Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor proved that you can make quality Star Wars stories with quality characters that are compelling and exciting and you actually care about them, and you can do that through the medium of video games. You don't need to do it through a TV show or a movie, and I think that would be the best way to give fans what they actually want, especially the original trilogy and prequel trilogy fans. The opportunity to get Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Leia Organa together again on the big screen has long since passed. Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford are not getting any younger. Carrie Fisher is unfortunately no longer with us. When it comes to the movies, we're not going to get that golden trio again. But in a video game, that is way more than possible. You don't even have to get Mark Hamill's likeness for Luke Skywalker. You could cast somebody else and just change the face model. That's exactly what they did with Battlefront 2 and that version of Luke Skywalker. That Luke was not voiced or played by Mark, but he still looks great. And despite how lackluster I'll call that mission, it was still really cool getting to control Luke Skywalker and seeing this small chapter of his life post Episode 6. Give me more of that, man. I want to see more Luke Skywalker, more Han Solo and Leia Organa and Chewbacca. I want them getting into all kinds of shenanigans post Episode 6, and I think video games are a perfect way to give us that. This is extremely wishful thinking of me. I don't think Lucasfilm is actually going to do this, even though I think they're aware of the gaming market and how lucrative it could be. Otherwise, I don't think they'd be going into that partnership with Epic Games, which I still don't really know the nature of that. I don't know if it's going to be exclusively a Fortnite collaboration with just a bunch of Star Wars skins in that game, or if Epic Games is actually working on something Star Wars specific. But either way, I think Lucasfilm is aware of how powerful gaming is right now and how big of an audience that it has, so I think they're trying to tap into it. From the outside looking in, it kind of feels like they're just throwing poodoo at a wall and seeing what slides down the slowest, so we'll see if anything substantial actually comes out of the Epic Games collaboration. I still think they need to make a Luke Skywalker-centric game. I think that would sell so well. In fact, make that the next trilogy of Jedi games. Cal Kestis' story is coming to an end in the third one. We know that that's going to be a nice, well-rounded trilogy of games. But that doesn't mean that the Jedi franchise has to end. I say keep it going, just have Luke Skywalker. I want to follow his adventures looking around the galaxy for Jedi texts and lore, maybe encountering some strange offshoot of a dark side cult that he has to defeat. Even though we know it goes to shit come time for the sequel trilogy, I still want to see him actually build his Jedi Order. I want to see him teaching the new generation of Padawans. There could be so many cool things that we could do playing as Luke, and I think it's a serious missed opportunity if Lucasfilm does not do that. I'm not holding my breath for it, and I know Kathleen Kennedy has gone on record herself saying that she admits Luke Skywalker sells, but for whatever reason they don't want to use him, so... No, scratch that. I know the reason. He's a white guy. This video kind of turned into a rant. I had the whole first half scripted, and then I kind of went off script a little bit towards the end. But let me know what you guys think. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Star Wars Outlaws is far from my game of the year. I'm not having a very good time with it. In fact, I deleted it shortly after beating it, and I haven't reinstalled it since. I know there's an update for the game, and I haven't tried it. I probably should. I should probably try the update and make a video on that. But what do you guys think? Do you think I'm right about Star Wars Outlaws? Are those two main reasons the big reasons, or is it just everything combined together? The bad word of mouth, crappy gameplay, the bugs? Let me know what you guys think. Let's have a conversation in the comments below. But that's all for today's video. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. This has been Star. Keep shining, baby.